Hey everybody, Jared here, and today we are going to learn to paint in Photoshop using Chromadepth glasses. And with Chromadepth, let me put my glasses on, color is equal to depth. Red goes forward, blue goes back, and there's special scenarios with purple and black for the background. But basically, red, orange, yellow, green, blue. From red to blue, that's what you're looking at. Let me come over here and show you another example. With an RGB from red to blue, the black background is all the way in the back, and this is a nice sort of mid-ground, creating a frame so you can see some of it coming forward, some of it going backward. Definitely need to have the Chromadepth glasses on to see the effect. The cool thing about Chromadepth is, without the glasses on, it just looks like a regular image, and that's what's neat. Now, a couple years ago, I tried to paint in Chromadepth using actual paint. And the trick to this is that you need to make sure that you follow all the rules of layers, all the conventions that you normally would follow when you're doing any sort of design work. That being said, if you look over here, you can see how the reds pop really nicely, the blues go really nicely in the back. The cool thing is I use very nice textured paint. If you use a lot of texture, which gives you shadow and highlights, that actually breaks up the space and makes it even more interesting. Solid colors work, but if there's any sort of a texture to it, it really helps to create even more of a sort of a vibrating depth effect. So you can see some of this works really, really well. The red, the orange, the greens work well. The trick here is this blue is backwards in space and it's in front of the yellow, and that doesn't work. So this is actually a mistake. These pop very well, and the gray just doesn't do much of anything. But considering this was a painting project, this is pretty good when you look at it. Now, some of my students have gotten really, really good over the years because basically they've learned you need to build in layers, and you think about those layers in terms of color and overlap and shape and depth, like you would anything else. And here's a great example of one, and this is really nice. Now, of course, the composition is really what helps here, and then the idea is that he really laid out the color to make that work. So let's do this together. Let's make a brand new document and show you how simple it is to do this. So I'm going to do File New, and I'm going to do inches. And I'm going to make this for print. So I'm going to go 10 inches wide, 8 inches tall, and I'm going to do 300 dpi. And then I don't care what the background's going to look like because we're going to replace that in a second. So I create my blank document. Wonderful. I can take my glasses off for a minute while I'm doing this because what I'm going to be doing is fairly routine. I'm going to make some layers. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my background layer. Notice, by the way, I'm leaving my background layer separate from my real background layer. I'm going to make my background layer and I'm going to fill it with black. There you go. Now let's add some other layers in here. And it's good to think of this in terms of layers. Remember, I told you that red is on top. And then we're going to have an orange. And then we're going to have a yellow. Then we're going to have a green. And then we're going to have a blue. Now, can you have more than layers of these? Absolutely. You can have as many layers as you want, as long as you understand the nature of the way the color works. I'm going to put my glasses back on, and I hope you've got your glasses as well. So if you look over here and you put your glasses on, you're going to see that the red comes forward, and it kind of slides into all the way into the blue right here. So this kind of comes forward, and then it kind of slides into the blue. We're going to ignore everything past blue. We're going to ignore anything in the magenta range because that isn't going to work for us here. And so really what you can start doing is asking yourself, what do you want to do with these layers? Now, I'm going with the simplest form of this, and that is the layered form. If you're going really advanced, you can actually paint in it completely. But let's just go with this basic starting point. So make my life a little bit easier. I'm going to kind of set up a little palette here. Now, this is an example for you to understand how the technology works so you can understand how the aesthetics work. Obviously, I'm not going to paint a really beautiful painting right now in a quick, 15-minute or so demo. Let me come over here and grab my color picker, actually, and let's grab red. All right, so I'm going to start off with nice red. There it is. It's a nice red. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to make my exaggerated. Here we go. So now there's a little red dot in the corner there on the red layer. And, of course, with the glasses on, it pops really nice. Now I'm going to go to my orange layer, and I'm going to change my color to orange. And now that I've changed my color to orange, I'm on the orange layer, and there you go. Notice, by the way, I'm not putting it underneath or over on top of it. I'm just sort of doing it just so I can get a sense of what it is off to the side. Good, now that I've done that, we've got to go to yellow. Yellow is very tricky because there's not a lot of yellows on a computer, as you know. And let's get the yellow in there, beautiful. And then I'm going to come over here and make sure that I'm on the yellow layer and do the yellow. And then I'm going to come over here to the green, go a little darker with the green, and I'm going to do green, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to skip cyan for a moment and go right to like a nice bright blue, and come over here and do the blue. Now, let me make another layer real fast. I'm going to make this cyan layer, and we're going to see where we think it fits in our scheme of things. So I'm going to come over here and do that, and then I make a little cyan dot off to the side, and we'll see how this works. Now I get to put my glasses back on, and what's really amazing is that even without any overlap, I can truly see exactly how these things are layered. Now what's funny is that, yeah, you can see that the cyan is very much on top of the blue and under the green fairly well. The fun part, of course, is that since I've got auto select turned on, I can really come around here and I can sort of shake this up and just have these dots rearranging as I go. I can now do an actual overlap, which will make things even more interesting. And then, oops, my black background. No, I can come over here and I can lock it. So I won't do that again. All right, so now that I've done this, I can have some real fun. And again, the idea being that I already have my layers laid out. If I wanted to really go and do a nice paint thing here, I'm on the red layer, I'm on the paintbrush tool, so I'm gonna come over here and actually be on red and select my red, make sure I'm on the red layer, and then just kind of wiggle around. There's the red. Now, let me come over here to the orange, select the orange. Now, if I really wanted to be clever, I might even come over here on my paintbrush and make my paintbrush a little smaller so that now things are a little bit more receding into space. There again, you can use the other things that you're trying to do as you're doing the rules of design. So I can come over here and make it a little smaller again. And now I'm going to come over here and do something like this. And you really are starting to get a nice build up, or a build down, as it were, of these colors. And then come back over here, make it a little smaller again. And then I'll even include cyan in my mix. Come over here, make it a little smaller again. And then lastly, come over here to my blue and do this again. So really, we've got a nice sense of layering here. Now, I don't want you doing an abstract composition, because the reality of it is, if you just make something that's very chromatically beautiful and hit Chromadepth, things will vibrate and look cool. I want to see composition. I want to see you building something that's less than abstract with this, so that you're actually doing something where it's like with the glasses off, you're like, oh, that's a strangely colored illustration. And with the glasses on, you're like, oh my God, it's 3D. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the back. Now, again, if I were to come over here, the white background, it just dies. The black background, it works really well. Let me invert for a moment so I can show you this. But I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab some, I would say a magenta, but sort of a dark purple. And what's cool about the dark purple is that it's not going to really work for what I'm trying to do in terms of drawing. I don't want to draw with the dark purple. But what I can do with the dark purple is I could come over here to my brush, and I can make it nice and big, and let's see if I can find like a nice scattery brush. I want a really nice scattery brush here. Let's try this one here. There we go, this is perfect. And so what ends up happening is it's breaking up the space. There's many different ways of breaking up the space with some sort of like a dark purple background. But all of a sudden, what ends up happening is that this purple space goes way back into space, because that texture allows your eyes to even vibrate this more. And again, if you're wearing the glasses, this is without the texture, and this is with the texture. And so you can see one of them is more grounding than the others. And I can even use this to create more of a sense of depth. If I come over here and I put in more of this, that's going to sort of start changing the nature of what I'm building. So there's a lot that you can do here. So texture is a really cool thing as you start playing with it. Let me come over to my red layer, give you another example. So I'm going to actually take my red layer, I'm going to make my brush black, and then I'm going to select only my red. So I'm going to select only my red, so this way there's no accidents that can happen. I can only paint on the red itself. And then I'm going to grab that same paintbrush, which is set to black, and I'm going to set the opacity of it a little bit lighter. And now here's what happens when I paint with these dots on my paintbrush. There we go. And so now if I get rid of that, you can kind of see that it does make it pop a little bit differently. Let me go to my history for a moment and show you what happens if I don't have that texture in there. So let's see. So this is before, and this is after. And you can see before, too many befores there, before and after, you can see how it actually becomes even more solid with a little bit of the speckled black in there. So the first thing you need to do is decide your composition. How are you going to do a painterly composition? With the anaglyph, we were doing specifically a line drawing. The idea that we were taking something and layering line drawings. But with this, we can do a lot more because we can blend colors, we can create gradients, but we can think about things in terms of shape. And that's really what I want you to think about, is creating these shapes and that really are going to pop when you put those glasses on. Because like right now, this is interesting in terms of the fact that everything makes sense. Your brain will interpret where the layers are. Your brain's going to look at it and go, this is on top of this, on top of this, because again, composition was accurate. But now when I do this, the whole thing just becomes dimensional. And that's really where you're going to get started. Now, the rest of it's up to you. You've got to play the aesthetics game. You've got to put it together and then do something as magnificent as this. All right, there you go. Get started. My name's Jared. Have fun. Do, by the way, save your layers. And then, of course, also save your final output as a nice little JPEG quality 12 so you can print it and hang it on the wall. All right.